Hello, friends. Come on in. We're going to get started because we want to keep rolling on time. Thank you for being here. Come on in. We'll have more food and drink later, so we'll have breaks through the day. Welcome. My name is Elise DeGoyer. I'm the Executive Director of Faith Action Network. How lucky am I to be with you all because you are Faith Action Network. So thank you. I want to introduce Reverend Corey Passons, who will welcome us to this space. Corey is the Interfaith Coordinator for Interfaith Works, and he'll tell you more.
Good morning, everyone. Good to see you. How are you today? Great. I was looking at the agenda today and the legislative agenda for FAN. I was just thinking it's overwhelming for one person. No one person could advocate for any of these bills collectively, but here we are together. So thank you for showing up and being here, being connected. I want to begin today by acknowledging that we are on the lands of the coastal Salish peoples. Today they're known variously in this county as the Squaxin Island Tribe, the Puyallup, Chehalis, and Nisqually. We recognize their stewardship of these lands since time immemorial. And we ask ourselves how we can be intentional towards forming relationships that are meaningful and supportive to these ongoing tribes. Thank you. Thank you. I'm Reverend Corey Passons. I'm here with Interfaith Works. Interfaith Works, our administrative offices are here in the United Churches of Olympia. We are a social justice nonprofit serving Thurston County. We're a coalition of 30 plus diverse interfaith spiritual communities. We're also the region's largest social service provider to vulnerable adults experiencing homelessness. I'm here today also on behalf of the United Churches of Olympia. Pastor Laura Krutzinger-Perry couldn't be here today, so I'm here to welcome you to this space and thank you for being here. I also serve a United Church of Christ congregation that meets in the social hall of this building on Sunday evenings called Community for Interfaith Celebration. So I'm very enmeshed in the life of this building, and I'm just so appreciative of the opportunity to come and greet you today. And I just wanted to take a moment. I've just named for whom I'm here, on behalf of whom I'm here for. I want to give you an opportunity to pause and to think, for whom are you here? For whom are you here? On whose behalf do you come today? And we can remember them in our hearts and our minds as we do our work today as a place of focus and a place of centering and a place of renewal. So thank you for remembering them, and thank you for having the opportunity for me to welcome you today to this space. Appreciate the work you do, Elise. Just want to appreciate you in this moment. You put out so much effort and time to make this happen. So I just want to recognize you and thank you for allowing us to convene together. And I just want to lift you up and support you and thank you.
Thanks for being here. You all look really beautiful in your orange scarves. It's one of my favorite parts is looking out at the colors of the glass and the orange scarves, and we're ready to go because this is what we do. This is what FAN is called to do, is be the voice of justice and truth and ethics and power in the halls of power, so they say. But we are the power, and this is our superpower. You know, at our cluster meetings in the fall, we asked people to identify what their superpower for advocacy was. And we heard some really amazing traits and commitments. And you all have those superpowers, so thanks for being here. We look forward to this day. We work really hard for this day, and you'll get a chance to hear from the staff who has put in sweat and tears for this day. And I know some of you have been up driving since 4 in the morning, so thank you for making those amazing journeys. We come today from the Far East, from Spokane, and we come from several carloads from Wenatchee. Amazing work. Unfortunately, our organizer in Wenatchee couldn't be with us, but she may be on Zoom. Several carloads came from Vancouver, carloads from North Bellingham. The Methodist United Women in Faith are here in beautiful form to collectively be here from across the state. And we're from right here in the Puget Sound region. This is where we gather, and as Corey mentioned, on sacred ground. So may the blessings of all the people of all those directions be with us today. You'll hear more about the day in a few minutes from our staff, all the logistics you need to know, and will be available throughout the day. And I want you to see them so you can ask questions as the day goes on. This year, there was not a room over on campus available, and that's because every space is being used, and they actually took down a building since last year. So we're missing one building. But we have a unique opportunity this year we haven't had in previous IFADs, is to see the House and Senate in action on the floor, debating, discussing, voting on bills to move them to the other chamber. So we really want you to make use of that and hang out a little bit in the legislative building and watch it happen. And for some of you, there may be a chance to do some floor polls, pulling your legislator. We've told you about that, so you should already know about that, but pulling your legislator off the floor for a brief conversation. To help us do that is our wonderful longtime volunteer in Olympia, Trevor Sanderson. And so look for Trevor, this guy with the scarf and the cane, and his spouse, Darcy Huffman. Thank you, Darcy. Also longtime fan, supporter, and helper. So look for Trevor and Darcy at the House doors. And Kristen Ang, our policy director, who you'll hear from soon, will be at the Senate doors. Kristen, can you just give him a wave? So look for Kristen at the Senate doors. She will be there, if not for a floor poll. You can talk about a policy you're concerned about, or what does she think about how this will move. So House, Senate doors. Last thing I'll say for this minute is we want to acknowledge that this is Interfaith Harmony Week. And some of us haven't felt that sense of interfaith harmony, but this is it. This is when we can come together on the things we agree on and take action together. And this is what, for me, inspires our interfaith harmony work. So no better day to do, or week to do that, than coming together as an interfaith, multi-faith, or statewide organization. So I also want to acknowledge it is Lunar New Year. So we're off to a new start. Let's make it a new start for these bills moving over to the Senate side after the cutoff next Tuesday. Two things to celebrate. But first, I want to ask the board members for FAN to stand up, and I want you to see them and know that they shepherd this mission and they support our work. Carol Jensen, board chair, Nigel Tabor Hamilton, Jim Castro Lang from Spokane, and I'd like to introduce Dr. Jasmeet Singh to say a few words about our day, our interfaith work, and to get us started. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. When Elise asked me to speak today, I think she didn't realize I love to speak. So she told me 3 or 4 minutes, and she did it at her own peril, because I never stick with the time. I'll try my best to do that. But friends, brothers and sisters, we gather here today not bound by the walls of one faith, but really our shared hope for a better world. We come from different spiritual paths, different traditions, yet the same common purpose. And that is a yearning for compassion, justice, and peace in this world. Look around you. See all the shining eyes around you. And those are shining with a shared hope. The hope that whispers in the face of despair, that ignites the flames of possibility when darkness threatens to consume us. This year has been very difficult for our faiths. But we have to speak the language that transcends words, the force that compels us to rise above our differences for the common good. We may each follow a different tradition, speak different languages of prayer, but beneath it all, there beats a single heart that yearns for a better world, a world where love conquers hate, where justice prevails, where the hope blooms eternal. Let us not be divided by the labels that separate us. Let us instead focus on the values that unite us: compassion, empathy, forgiveness, kindness, and an unwavering belief in the potential of each human being. The world around us often throws shadows of despair. Conflict, injustice, inequality, environment, healthcare, hunger, hate, fear, and the list goes on. It's easy to feel overwhelmed, to retreat into our own individual beliefs, seeking solace within familiar worlds. But remember, the light of a single candle may be small, yet the countless flames that come together today, they can illuminate the darkest corners. That is the power of you all being here today. Together, let us identify the values that bind us: love, compassion, justice. This is the universal language of the soul. Imagine a society where the wisdom of countless traditions converges to address the challenges that we face. That is the society we can build together, brick by brick, act by act, hand in hand. Let us start today. Let us start here today on this Advocacy Day. Let us pledge to use our faith to unite us. Let us be the change we wish to see in this world. Let us go forth, my friends, not as isolated pilgrims, but as a united caravan, carrying the torch of hope. Let us show this world the power of faith united, playing a symphony of a shared purpose. Let us not be known by our prayers of solitude, but by the actions that we take together. Let us be the generation that bridges the gaps, dismantles walls, and builds a society where hope thrives. Remember, the greatest miracles are not wrought by singular feats, but by collective power of countless hearts beating as one. Let us be those miracle workers, the architects of the future, where faith comes to bridge to a more just and compassionate world. Let us start today. Let us start now, and together build a society worthy of our shared dreams. May the light of hope guide our steps, and may the spirit of unity forever bind us together. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasmeet. That was beautiful. And I'm looking out at a room full of miracle workers. So we're going to get working on that and love over hate. Next on our agenda, if Senator Trudeau's not here yet, we are going to have the staff introduce logistics. And I just want to say thank you. Before they come up, they'll introduce themselves to all the staff for all the sweat and tears and putting up with my stuff that you've done all week and all month. And I feel like we prepared. I mean, they had a vision of preparing you with these pre-session briefings and Advocacy 101 and so many emails. So they really will deserve a big applause when they come up. Two things I want to say really quick, though, because I've been handed little flyers, is we have these little pink slips. In the midst of this preparation, we were asked to collect faith leader names and signatures for a letter to protect housing for low-income people and protect renters so they don't become homeless. They are on the table back there. We didn't get them in your packets. Please, if you haven't signed as a faith leader, clergy member, or however you deem yourself as a faith leader, please sign and get your faith leader to sign. We'll be turning those in on Friday. The other thing I want to mention is the Poor People's Campaign is here, and they have a big gathering on March 2nd, right here in Olympia, 11 o'clock March, 12 o'clock on the steps. Ray Thomas, would you stand and talk to Ray about it? And there's a lot of these flyers. Please share them in your communities. And I'm going to stop and say, staff, come on up. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm one of the first members of our staff. My name's Alex. I'm our network events manager here. So today is one of my favorite days, a big event. But just so you all know, everyone should have gotten one of these packets when you came in. If you did not get a packet, please see our front check-in area before you leave for the rest of the day. But in here, there's all sorts of really important information, your agendas, all sorts of things that the rest of our fan staff is going to talk about. But just so you also know, there are QR codes. So there's little things to scan with your phone on our back of our agenda page. There's 2 of them. Just logistically, how you do it is you just pull out your camera, point it at the QR code, and it should pop up a little link. If you are having any trouble, come find me and I'll help you. But thank you all. I'll turn it over to our next person from staff, Tomo.
Hi, everyone. My name is Tomo Duke. I am Hunger Advocacy Fellow at Faith Action Network, and I'll be talking about appointments, which is really important. I don't want you guys to miss the appointments. I hope to be clear as I can. So there is this long master schedule that you all got, and then I would like you to also pull up the map from your packet so we can look through it together. I believe everyone has already received a couple of emails from one of our staff here regarding your appointments with your legislators today. This master schedule, on the left side, you see all the numbers of districts. So all you have to see is identify your district and then go look at the section that has your district. And it's pretty straightforward. It has how many people who are attending from the district, 1 senator and 2 representatives, House representatives, an office location and the phone number and the time that you have appointments with your legislators. I recommend at least 5 minutes prior to your meeting, you would like to check in at the respective building that you're having an appointment with. And then next to the time that you see the meeting room, I would like you to point that you need to pay attention to this meeting room because some appointments have a different room assigned, different from the office location. So some appointments might be joint meeting in a conference room, which could be different from office location. So please pay attention to the meeting room. And some districts, as Elise mentioned, both the House and the Senate are on the floor voting. And so some offices were not able to offer us an appointment. In that case, it might say floor pool. If it says floor pool, you would meet either Kristen or Trevor on the 3rd floor of the legislative building. Or there are also offices that whose staff have coordinated with us to do a floor pool, and that would be all indicated on the far right column, whether you would meet Kristen and Trevor on the 3rd floor, or you would meet with the staff of the office in the respective building and office. And with the map, So there are 4 main buildings that you would also have your meetings at. The buildings are 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the map. There are stars, red stars with the numbers, so you would go 3 or 4 or 5 or 6. And legislative building is identified as LEG on the master schedule. John O'Brien building is identified as JLOB. And then Sherberg is JAC. And legislative modular building is LMB. The abbreviation is also mentioned at the bottom of each paper of your master calendar. And if you happen to have no meeting with some of the offices, I also still encourage you to write notes. There's a memo in your packet, I believe, that you can write notes to your legislators. I encourage you to still write notes. Make sure to mention that you're here in person until 3 p.m., 3:30 today, and you're available to meet if they have any availability. Put your email address and drop them off at the office or check-in point of each legislator's building. I'm saying this because last week we had success stories of groups who dropped off their notes even though they didn't have meetings. And 30 minutes later, they were reached out from the office and said, hey, representative is ready to meet you. He's ready to come out of the floor and meet you guys. And so if you don't have a meeting, please don't be discouraged and still write notes and let them know that you're here. So that's all from me. If you have any question, please reach out to any of us. On the district, on the master calendar, under the district number, there's also a staff name who took care of your appointments. So if you can find the person who took care of your appointments, we all have answers for you. All right.
Good morning, everyone. What a great view from here. I wish you could all see it. I'm Elizabeth Dickinson. I'm the partnership coordinator for FAN, and I'm going to talk to you for a minute about the caucus meetings, which are super important. I know some of you have even done some meeting ahead of time, and for that, we're really grateful. I'm going to take off my glasses so I can see my notes. So the first thing to know is that the caucus time has 2 main goals. The first is to develop that sense of collective power within your legislative district as you go off to your meetings, get ready for your meetings. And the second is to know exactly what you're going to do during your short 15-minute legislative meeting. And that means really identifying speakers and stories that you want to share from your community, and maybe 1 to 2 bills that you really want to focus on. You have a lavender piece of paper that tells you everything we hope you need for having a caucus meeting. And these will begin at 11:20. Don't get too distracted by food, but lunch will be coming in sometime around then, 11:40, I think. And on that piece of paper, the outcome is what you will help you decide really how the agenda of your meeting will flow. Let's see. Take a photo. Make sure and take a photo when you're meeting, and you can then send it with your thank you note afterwards. And I would suggest coming up here and getting a picture with the FAN logo and everything. You will meet at 11:20. We have all around the sanctuary, all of the numbers for the legislative districts that are represented here. So that's how you can meet up with folks. If you have a big group, you will probably want to go someplace else to chat, just leave a note on your number about where you've gone so that other people can join you. Stories, stories, stories. Our personal experience, our community experience is what we're sharing today. Don't worry too much about the facts and the fact sheets. We're here as constituents, as citizens, as members of communities, as members of faith communities that make a difference every day, and we have that to share. A couple other resources outside in the sort of lobby area. There is a list of the bills that are alive. That doesn't mean that you can only talk about those, but it does help you know what might have extra momentum right now. There's also the list that we sent to you earlier about the committees for your legislative districts, for your legislators. And finally, just a plug that when you've identified the bills that you are going to be talking about or the budget asks that you're going to be talking about, you can go and check on the legislative website to see whether your legislator is already supporting or co-sponsoring that bill. It'll just change the quality of your conversation. It might not change what you want to say. Thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited. Come talk to any of us. If you have any questions, we'll be happy to help you with caucusing. Thanks.
But wait, there's more. Mine will be pretty short and sweet. I'm Brianna Diltz. I'm the Eastern Washington Regional Organizer, so joining from Spokane. It's great to be here with all of you. Just a few kind of housekeeping things to note. There's going to be a 5-minute break before each one of the workshops is scheduled to begin, so you can grab some snacks, maybe take a sip of your coffee, run to the restroom, and scarves. If you haven't gotten one, there should hopefully still be some on the table out in the kind of entryway, but if there's not, you know all of our faces now, you can come find us. And then double check your legislative appointments. For those of you who have early appointments at like 12, 12:15, 12:30, you'll likely have to grab your lunch and just get going to the Capitol. It's about a 10 to 15 minute walk. So during your caucus time, that would be a good time to make a game plan with your group and make sure you get to those appointments on time. And then lastly, the church closes at 3:30. So take your belongings with you, or if you leave them here, we will have a staff person here, but 3:30 is the hard cutoff. You won't be able to get back in, so make sure you return before then. But we're looking forward to advocating with you. And we have one more, I think, person to speak.
Just a note that your list of legislative appointments is not necessarily in chronological order. So do, when you're caucusing, check to see when your first appointment is. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Blake Alford, Fan Office Coordinator and Criminal Justice Reform Work Group co-lead. And thanks again so much for being here. Just a few more details to share. Really important, bathrooms are on the top level, and those are men and women's restroom, and then there is a gender-inclusive restroom on the basement floor. So we have those options for you. Next coming up is our workshops, some great opportunities to learn some more about specific issues and policies you care about. And they will be in the sanctuary here, the chapel, which is the room just straight ahead where you were eating breakfast this morning. And then the fireside is where the food was this morning, so up to the right on the first floor. And then downstairs, we have a couple in the social hall. So that's the room with a chair circle and a prayer labyrinth in it. So if you know what that is, we can help you find it if you don't. So important to note, it says choose one. That's because these workshops are only happening once. So if you don't get a chance to go to every one you want to, make sure you talk with someone within your district, catch up on those details, share a few sheets, but make sure you attend these. So those will be at 10 o'clock and 10:40 respectively. Then we want to make sure we'll have lunch available by latest by 11:50, and we want to make sure also you're here for our group photo on the steps. This is a great moment. You can shine with your scarves and have a triumphant moment with us and celebrate all our advocacy together. So make sure you're there. If you have an appointment, then don't worry. Just take your own picture with your district group on the steps and send it to us. We'd love to have that. So one final detail. As maybe said before, some appointments may be changing. So on the back of the schedule, there's these awesome QR codes that you can scan anytime with your cell phone, and that'll help you keep up with anything that changes. And we as organizers will do our best to keep you informed of what's happening. And lastly, I don't want to forget, if you need to have an ADA compliant route to the basement, you'll want to exit out the front door here and take 2 lefts, and then you'll be downstairs. And please make sure you get a staff member if you have any trouble with that. So I'm going to now pass it back to Kristen. So Kristen Ang, our Policy Engagement Director, welcome. Thank you so much.
So we're going to use this moment for a staff picture while Kristen comes up, because it's a rare moment. We're a statewide staff. We're never in the same room together, and we're just missing Jess from Wenatchee, but we'll Photoshop her.
Do we want to take it right over here?
Sure. So Mark, our photographer will get it. Sorry, I know there's things like policy, but where? Okay. Okay. Oh, come on. All right. Mark's coming, right? Downstairs somewhere.
Let's do a cheer. I think we need.
There he is.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Suspense.
Move away from the logo for a minute. Okay. Want me to move here? Or?
Thank you for bearing with
So then
us.
we're going to talk about policy from now on, from this moment on.
Oh, you need to move forward. They can't see.
Thank you.
Okay.
And now Kristen.
Well, no, I was actually hoping she'd be here. Well, good morning and welcome to Interfaith Advocacy Day. It is so good to see you all here ready to rock and roll. By coming to the Capitol, you're not only representing your faith communities, but also bridging the gap between spiritual values and civic engagement. Your presence is a vivid reminder of the critical role that faith communities play in advocating for a more equitable and sustainable future. It is also a great way to connect with each other. It's a vital opportunity from people of diverse backgrounds to find our strength and our shared commitment to justice and compassion. I'll see if Senator Trudeau is coming through the door, but until then, I will tell you about what's going on with session, because it is fast and intense. As everyone know here, I call it the espresso, short and intense session. It's 60 days for 2024, and it started on January 8th and likely to conclude on March 7th. We're at day 32. We are past the halfway point of session. The House and Senate are in a flurry to pass bills before the House of Origin cutoff on Tuesday, February 13th. That's why it is also a great day or great time. I always say it's a great time to advocate no matter what, because they do need to hear from people like you. People with the unique perspectives, and it enriches the legislative processes. So I would say that we are in the second year of a 2-year biennium. The last year was a 105-day session. This is a short session. And you wouldn't think it though, with thousands of bills that people want. And some of them have already died. But I would say that the amount of bills and ambition just shows me that there's a lot of hope, but there's also a lot of need. Because if there wasn't a lot of bills, that means people are apathetic, but they're not. They want to continue this advocacy. Democrats lead the agenda in Olympia with strong majorities in both the House and Senate. 58 seats to 40, and Senate 29 seats to 20. But I will stop right now because I want to introduce my senator from my area, 27th LD Senator Yasmin Trudeau, who has been a champion for housing and justice, was the former legislative assistant to then Senator Jayapal, and the legislative director of the Attorney General's office, and is now our senator. Welcome, Senator Trudeau.
Well, I was interested in the rest of what Kristen was going to say, so now I'll be waiting in suspense. But I did, I really, really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all today. Yasmin Trudeau, I have the honor and privilege of representing the 27th Legislative District, and my esteemed colleague. I don't know if I'm allowed to reference you as Port Commissioner Ang here, but it's amazing to serve, honestly, among such great leaders, especially in Tacoma and Pierce County, as we continue to address all the challenges in front of us. I also, speaking in front of folks that are here and motivated by their faith and a deep spiritual connection to the people around you and to doing good work, I want to thank you. I also am the first American Muslim to serve in the state legislature. I don't know how that happened. I hope that, that my goal is to make sure that I'm certainly not the last, and that we continue to make a space for all faiths, for all spiritual connections to happen in this place, because I truly think when you're motivated by the heart and the soul, that's where we can actually dig down deep and start doing the work that's going to help connect people and touch people directly. So I want to thank you. Thank you. Woo! Yeah. Especially at this point in session. So I know there's things that we want to talk about and issues that you want to be aware of, but I'd heard, Kristen talking about the point in session that we are in. And right now it's in the middle of 60 days worth of chaos, right? I mean that it's even more chaotic given that we have, 5 people within my caucus that are all running for statewide office or Congress or something else, which that's another layer of complication. We have a part-time legislature, so we're expected to do a whole bunch of work within a 60-day time frame. And honestly, thank you for just trusting us to do that. It seems like an almost impossible task to make good decisions when things are just happening so fast. You don't even have a moment to think about the unintended consequences. And as we all know in this room, unintended consequences happen to real people. So, and I, as someone, I think the first in the Senate to serve with a very small baby last year, understanding what it means for childcare, what it means for, as a person who's come up as a low-income renter, what does it mean to be the first in my family to own a home and see what's happening to renters all around me, including the people that I love? What does it mean to have these conversations in a space where people are not historically renters, right? Who are not historically like mothers of young children, who are not historically representing areas that we know are hurting right now and people that are feeling like they're being excluded. So the conversations are really tough. And when I saw that I had the opportunity to speak to you all today, it's sort of a light. It's a light in the chaos to be affirmed and reminded of what we're doing here and who we're doing it for. So that was a long way of just saying thank you for showing up. I think when folks show up in Olympia and they represent their faith and they remind others of what it means to represent their faith as well, it is just thank you. I cannot tell you how much it means. And I know there were a couple of bills that folks wanted to hear about, but I'm going to go back. I'm preparing myself emotionally to go back and have a big floor day where, again, these discussions will continue to get really difficult and really charged. But, we forge ahead, right? We always forge ahead. I heard that there are 3 things that maybe folks wanted me to speak to here. One is social justice. I was like, oh, I got a prompt on social justice, just a tiny little thing that we could talk about probably for all day long. But one of the things when I decided to run, that I had a conversation with my predecessor about was come up with the things that anchor you. Like, what's your mission statement? What's the thing that you want people to know about you? And there were 2 principles that I want to keep close to my heart on anything that I work on. And that is that we need to increase opportunity and we need to decrease disparity. And that's how I look at tackling things related to social justice. So you'll see that I have a number of bills across issue areas, but the goal is they do both, but they at least have to do one or the other if I'm going to put my name onto it. So that's what I bring as far as my social justice lens. You know, as far as where I draw that well from, I mentioned before that, you know, I come from a family of low-income folks, of people that fairly recently immigrated to the United States. My mother never learned to read or write. She continues to struggle with her own disabilities, as do some folks in my family. And I think it is our role as people who govern and that have been entrusted to govern to prioritize the people that I grew up with, the people that I call my family and my community, because we do not exist in isolation. Community means that we depend on each other. And so when you do better, I do better. I also, you know, want to thank you again. I think the piece about community engagement, sometimes I've realized that as legislators, we forget how important it is to make sure that we are keeping the ties with our community. And we come down to Olympia and we get in this black box and everybody starts thinking about, you know, what they're going to do or what vote they're going to get or what bill they're going to get across. And that's why I said, when you come down, when community comes down, it is a reminder to us of what we're actually doing. It's not about just counting votes. It's not about just passing a bill because our name is on it, about getting something signed by the governor. It's about remembering that the people that we're working for are watching us and they're counting on us and they're reminding us of all the things. And so to me, the community engagement during session that you all do is such a critical part of the work that we do. But I also think that it's on us to make sure that we're engaging more directly with you, especially in the interim and especially during times where we can have dialogue that doesn't force you into 15-minute conversations to talk about the importance of one's humanity. So I am trying to work on that, and I'm trying to convey that to other legislators, because advocates come down and then we get in a scarcity mentality because we're forced to then be like, well, why not this priority? Why that priority? Well, we've got 60 days and 15 minutes to convince people. And I think that we ought to do a better job of more deep and meaningful engagement with you all as well. So I just want to say that that's a commitment that thank you. So a little side clap. You don't all have to clap, but thank you. Appreciate you. And so I wanted to offer that I think sometimes we ask community to do more than we're willing to do. And I think that's something we ought to take on and work hard to correct. Thank you. And I also spoke a little bit about the role of faith in public policy. Now, I'm not the most religious individual, right? I speak to folks from my own community and I say, please don't judge me. I'm doing the best that I can. And I really believe that we are all doing the best that we can. But I think when we carry that perspective of faith and we carry that perspective of humanity, which to me are really interchangeable, right? When we think about what we draw into and who we care about and why, those are the moments that we can cross lines. Like, I actually think that as when we speak from faith, it's sort of above, it's one of the few opportunities we have to be above the political fray. It's one of the few opportunities that we have to actually connect with each other, not just about a bill, but when you have the opportunity to look into someone's eyes and say, I share the same faith as you, and this is why I support this issue, we bring it all the way back. And I just think that that's an incredible, I mean, unlike, there are many wonderful advocacy groups, and I'm sure folks in here belong to many of them, but there is something about the faith community that just resonates so deeply. And I think as we run around, right, trying to meet with people, I just want a reminder to you all that it's significant and it's unique in a way that I can't describe and other legislators can't describe. And so it's so important. There's a couple of bills that I heard folks might be tracking. One of them is around the Gift Card Accountability Act. I was proud to sponsor that bill in the Senate. Unfortunately, the Senate vehicles are not moving forward. We still have many conversations to be had with some of my dear colleagues in the Senate Democratic Caucus about how and why we may protect certain institutions. We couldn't get there on this side. I'm hopeful that the House bills continue to have a path, But if you're not familiar with what the bills do, one of the bills, we split them into two, but one of the bills would allow sort of a consumer fairness, right? Being able to pay with cash and a gift card, being able to cash out at a certain amount, not being locked into mobile apps that force you to reload more money onto cards to use the money you already have on the card. Very basic stuff. Unfortunately, even the basic bill wasn't able to move forward. The other bill that we have, and don't worry, right? We always come back. We come back, and we come back, and we come back. As our faith tells us to, right? We come back and we keep fighting and we keep trying to make that voice happen. But that was really frustrating to not see sort of a basic bill move forward. But it was connected to another bill, which was the unclaimed property. It had to do with transferring profits that these large companies making over $100 million a year, are counting now as profits because they're claiming unspent gift card money as their own profit. And that is not what consumers expect. That money is that is consumers' money. And so we ran a bill to say that, you notify consumers when there's unspent gift cards, and then if they don't spend it, you send it to the state, where consumers know they can go and get unclaimed property. We've had the unclaimed property account for many, many years. And instead of corporate profits, if we have unspent gift cards, which, by the way, the bill says you can claim anytime, no matter how much is in that account, it's not dependent, but that money could then go towards the very services that some of these large corporations are denying their own workers. So I think there's a matter of fairness and humanity in both of those bills, and I'm very sad that we couldn't get there in the Senate, but I remain hopeful that we're going to keep pushing those conversations forward, because I think they bring up something that is unique, not just about the bills, but they bring up about how we look at issues. Who do we think should be entitled to people's hard-earned money? Who are the stewards of that? And I think these are conversations that we should all continue to have anyway. And I'm not saying that the government is necessarily, it has done the best job. I've come up critiquing government myself. It's the reason that I decided the public service was for me, is because I was so frustrated with everything that was happening around me for so long. In fact, if I may deviate, it was in a law school class, constitutional law, and I was getting in an argument with someone about how the law was neutral. Yeah, and I was like, who the heck writes this stuff? I kid you not, and here I am today. I actually worked with one of my professors from law school on a bill that I introduced this session. He's like, I remember when you said that. And I said, yeah, I don't feel any better about knowing it now either. To be honest, I'm more alarmed. But these are the discussions that I think we ought to be having. But I know that what consumers expect is that their money should not be going towards corporate profit, when that corporate profit isn't even benefiting the very people that are needing services, because they aren't getting the increase in wages and other supports that they need, right, for their daily living. And I think that's something we can all agree on. Another bill, and I'll look to folks if there's cut the mic. I don't know how long I'm going for, but I am really excited to speak to you all today. So the other bill is around my Senate Bill 5961, House Bill 2114, which is a bill to stabilize rents and rent increases. This has been a journey this session, if you've been tracking this bill. My bill focuses on rent increases. It's a little tiny part of the housing conversation that is having incredibly negative impacts on our community. And that's because right now, people are just increasing with no justification. They're increasing rents. People are being forced out of their homes. They're being forced into evictions, which means they're going to be kept out of homes. And we know the cost of that. There's the fiscal cost of rehoming and rehousing folks, but there's the true human cost that comes when people become unhoused. And this is probably one of the most painful conversations that I've had to have in the Senate, because I cannot fathom how we do not make that direct connection in our minds and our brains. And this isn't to slam housing providers and landlords, right? There are many actually smaller landlords that have been stepping up and speaking up. But I think we have to understand that those in the legislature, again, are farther and farther away often from the lives that everyday people face, right? We ascend to a certain level of privilege to even get into this work. And I think that that makes us forget often. It's like a weird amnesia. I don't know what it is that happens to us, but there ends up being a lot of folks that are in the landlord community that serve in the legislature, right? This owning home ownership is generational wealth. Generational wealth is privilege. That privilege then turns into opportunities for leadership, and that is why we see what we see happening. But the problem is bigger than that. And I've been trying to tell folks, I'm like, this is a tidal wave, this is a tsunami. Like, we either get ahead of it now, or we're gonna pay the cost forever. And so what are we really talking about here? And I've been willing to put all political capital on the line to just make sure, again, for this little piece that has such a big, huge impact. We heard data in the Housing Committee that a $100 rent increase correlates with a 9% uptick in homelessness. That is for urban areas. For rural areas, it's 38% correlation with a $100 increase. Now, why my rural partners, right, my colleagues are not concerned about this, I don't know. My heart breaks. I cannot understand. Thank you so much. But I think for you all, this is who are we talking about, and what are we talking about, and why are we talking about it? Because we know that this is a generation, this is a moment. This is a pivotal moment when we can do something to actually keep people in their homes. And when we don't, and we destabilize people, what are we saying about our community and the community that we want in the future? We can't expect people to dream if they can't even have stable footing underneath them. And housing is part of our hierarchy of needs. Food, shelter, right? Like, these are basic needs that we have to have as human beings in order to thrive. So when I think about all the other kids whose families now are on the brink, right? I remember living on the brink, but I didn't exist as a child in the world we exist now, where we have no affordable housing to move people to. And the housing that they're in, right, every month is an anxiety attack about what they're going to do for the next month. What are their kids doing? What are the little Yasmins doing when their parents and their mothers are freaking out about what they're going to do next? Are they going to have room to dream to become a senator someday? Probably not, because how do you do that? And so these are the conversations that I carry about, that I care about deeply, and that I think that you all are absolutely wonderful messengers on. Because it's not about the politics, it's not demeaning, it's not about demonizing landlords, it's not demonizing any particular industry. It is about uplifting the people that are hurting right now. That's the bottom line. And also, I found out so much. I found out that it's one industry that actually there's no B&O tax required of. I found out all kinds of things. And also, as a first-time homeowner, I was like, oh my gosh, I now realize all the privileges that come with home ownership. And it helps me advocate actually for renters even better, because now I understand. But we do need to get more folks with lived experience and direct lived experience in the legislature. And I think that that's how we're actually going to change like hearts and minds, like sustainably. We need more people. We need to create the infrastructure to get more, younger folks, more diverse folks, more LGBTQ folks, more people of faith, right, and of diverse faiths. Like, we need to have all of those folks at the conversation so that we can be representing our entire community in the way that they deserve and the way that I think they expect. And we're in that moment of time in politics right now where people's trust is super low. And I honestly, all I can say is I get it. My trust is super low. I'm every single day, I'm like, okay, we're gonna get through this. I have a little mantra that I give myself every day, and then I give it at the beginning of the day, and then on my ride home, right? It's something that I repeat to myself to make sure that I remember what I'm doing, because it does feel overwhelming. It does feel like nobody's listening, and it does feel like the politics does not care about the average person. But some of us do. You all are here because you do. And so I'll end the way I started, which is just to say thank you, because it makes such a big difference. And if we can build just a little bit of trust and just work together to continue that, I really think that we're at a point in time where we can actually save our democracy, as naive as that might sound. But I fear that time is fleeting, and it's fleeting really, really quickly. So I hope you will continue to work with me and continue to trust me so that we can actually advocate and center our most beloved community members of all faiths and of all backgrounds. And I thank you so much for having me today.
Okay. All right, so I guess I got a few minutes here, and I just wanted to bring up the bill that Senator Trudeau will be championing in the Senate, but we got to get it passed by the House first. So I'm glad you're all here today, and that is House Bill 2114, which will provide stability for tenants, rent stability. We're just simply asking the first 12 months, you don't increase that rent, but also like 7% increase. We're trying to get there, or you need to do more notice. I would say that I also want to thank some of our partners, which this is not possible, which is Civil Survival, Earth Ministry. This is not done alone. ACLU, Washington Coalition of Police Accountability, Balance Our Tax Code, NAMI Washington, and Healthcare is a Human Right. I see Ronnie Shore over there. I would say that ACLU, Attorney General's Office, this is not done alone. This is very much a collective effort. And sometimes when people look at the FAN agenda, they're like, oh my, you know what they say. They're like, that is long. And it's because all of these sections are interrelated. They're each a foundational pillar for a just and equitable society. They actually amplify one another and is necessary for what our community needs. And that actually gives us a comprehensive approach to meet the multifaceted needs of our community. So I'm just gonna go down really quickly, about 1 minute, about some of the things that we got. We have actually advocated so well these past years that the legislature's like, we're not sure if we can fund anymore. We still need, though, funding for food banks and pantries, senior nutrition programs. Unfortunately, there will be no advancement for free school meals for kids because we got 90,000 last year, and they're still trying to figure out how to fund that. 90,000 more kids last year. I would say, in terms of climate, we do need to modernize our recycling system, and that's the REWRAP Act. That's House Bill 2049. We need to get the House to pass that so we can get to the Senate, as well as 100% clean school buses. Our kids should not be inhaling diesel. There should not be any diesel death zones all around or asthma. So that's House Bill 1368. Ask your House members to pass that so it can get to the Senate. I would say for housing, again, House Bill 2114, please remember that. We will always advance immigrant and refugee rights. We are asking for $25 million for newly arrived asylees and immigrants. You have done it before. You have advocated to get 28.5 for refugee serving organizations when there was nothing in the legislature at that time. But we need your help again to get this done. I would say continue, yes, thank you. We also need to continue funding the Health Equity for Immigrants campaign. That was a major win last year. There was gonna be $0 for that, but you got about $50 million, but we still need to get that over the edge and get more money because there are actually more undocumented. If they apply, if all of them apply, it won't cover all of them. I would say for fostering public safety and civil rights, we need to support the independent prosecutor bill. That there would be an independent prosecutor, it would create an office to prosecute unlawful use of force that ends in death. That's House Bill 1579. And of course, nothing about us without us, that there should be people on a panel. If you're gonna make a panel or something that impacts people, impacted people should be on that panel. And that's House Bill 1541, nothing about us without us. We will always support Indigenous communities and education. That's House Bill 1332. And faith communities, I wanna say, injustice one is injustice to all. And that if one faith community is in danger, all of us is in danger. So we must ask our legislature, especially appropriations and Senate Ways and Means, to increase the security grants. We have noticed this trend, as well as the Senate, because it did already pass, the House, because it already passed the Senate, the Bias Incidents Hotline. That's Senate Bill 5427, would support people who have been targeted or affected by hate crimes and bias incidents. It would actually track, collect data, as well as provide resources and support. That's Senate Bill 5427. I would say we are advancing even more in terms of gun responsibility. Last year, we passed the ban on the future sale of assault weapons, as well as dealer responsibilities. That was big, that was all of you. But there's even more, and it is on our legislative agenda, and I can't go through all of them now, but we will continue the movement for safety for our children and ourselves. And I would say for expanding healthcare, this is the last section. We heard from all of you that this is a real issue in our communities, that our kids are suffering. And so we have been working with NAMI Washington, as well as Healthcare as a Human Right, to advocate for these bills, to provide more health services to our youth in schools and out of schools. And so if you'd like to read some of this legislative, because we're about to go to workshops now, please go look at our fan bill tracker and our legislative agenda, and you will hear more about these bills. Plus the workshops are on, and you can hear directly from the organizations that are grassroots and advocate here in Olympia, as well as come up with the policy. So thank you so much. I hope you actually absorb some of that.
Sorry, your time. So that was the espresso version, and it's all in your packets. And if you want to talk to Kristen about any of those, you can find her all afternoon, 1 to 3, but at the Senate doors. So you can continue the conversation or ask for clarification. We're running behind, folks, and we have special guests ready to do workshops. So for your agenda, we're going to start the workshops at 10:10. It's going to move everything about 10 minutes, but that's okay. So 10:10 in here, environment, we'll start, and everything else is is posted. The signs are posted or in your agenda. Thank you so much for being here.
Hello. Hey, how are y'all doing? Good. Wonderful. Thank you so much for those of you who are joining. For those of you who are fellowshipping in the back or personingship in the back. Gendered language is weird, but continue to do so. And if you find your way in here and sitting with us, we are so glad you're joining us. So good morning. My name is Reverend A.C. Churchill. I am the executive director at Earth Ministry, Washington Interfaith Power and Light. Well, hey, thanks. I got a woo. We should get a woo for Sarah in just a second, too. My pronouns are they, them. And although our time will be brief together with one another, we have a lot to share with you and are excited and grateful that you are joining us for this conversation around putting your faith, your spirituality, your morals, your values into action for the well-being of our communities and the environment. So as you see on the screen here, we've got a couple questions that we just kind of want you to ponder. We'll come back to them as in a little bit in terms of our presentation. And I'll go ahead and read those as well for our kind of recording. So today we can act and share why we care for our communities and the environment. Some questions that we tend to pose in these spaces are, what values inform your call to environmental justice? Why do you do this work? Is it for legacy? Is it for a responsibility? Is it because your sacred tradition tells you and encourages you and invites you to do this? Who inspires you to live out your values? Again, is it your own sacred readings and teachings? Is it your family, your friends, your own encounters with the divine? And then how does your conscience and or faith compel you to act? And a reminder that advocacy is one way that we act. It's one of the ways. There are many other ways that we act, but today and specifically we're talking about advocacy. So for us at Earth Ministry, they told me how to use this. You would think, as a millennial, oh, did it work? It worked! See, millennials need help with technology too, y'all. Okay, so for us at Earth Ministry Washington IPL, our mission is to transform faith and spirituality into action for the well-being of our communities and the environment. And we have a number of priorities that we'd like to talk with you about today. But before I go into them, I'd like to give just a moment for our advocacy manager, Sarah, to introduce herself.
Hello and good morning. It's wonderful to be here with you. My name is Sarah Robinson. I'm advocacy manager, and my pronouns are she, her, and I'm just so grateful for this opportunity to be together today to think and feel and act toward the well-being of our precious planet and our precious communities. Thank you for being here.
Again, just as a note, we know we'll be going through a lot of this information quickly. Afterwards you can have access to our slides, but also there's information outside in the gathering space about both the organization, Earth Ministry Washington IPL, and these particular bills. And a shout out and a thank you to our board chair, Reverend Laura Baumgarter, who's in the back, and then our development and communications manager, Maria Thompson, who has been helping to hand out our one-page flyers on these. So the first bill that we want to talk to you about is actually one that unfortunately will not be moving on. And we want to bring it to you because we want to talk to you about going ahead and setting intention and remembering why we do this work, especially for upcoming legislative cycles. So CURB is the Cumulative Risk Burden Pollution Act. It was sponsored by Front and Centered, and it had several different particular pieces to it. The first is that it would enact environmental justice into permitting. So right now, our state does not include in factors like equity and justice in terms of permitting. For those of you who are from the 27th District, the Tacoma area, you might be familiar with the Tacoma Mega Warehouse, which was a project that got permitted simply because, well, I'm going to boil this down, simply because it fit the zoning requirements. There was no factor for whether or not it would increase emissions and increase harm to already overburdened communities. That was not considered. So CURB would have required that the Department of Ecology either condition or deny permits that increased emissions and pollutions, first prioritizing and tracking data that around overburdened and historically impacted communities. And it would do it so in several different ways. Again, this particular piece of legislation did not make it past appropriations. It did not make it past the Senate because it was offered in both. So it's hard to hear this, but as you are speaking with your legislators, one of the reminders about this particular piece that we have to continually bring to the forefront is that environmental justice, understanding how projects get approved and how access to green and renewable energy, how communities who are historically overburdened, those pieces have to be included in our environmental work. We have to explicitly include anti-racism and pro-reconciliation policies in our environmental work. And so as we shift towards looking towards CURB coming back, or a version of CURB coming back in 2025, make sure to tell your legislators it's important that we prioritize legislation that cares for the health of all Washingtonians, not just some. So there are a number of different things that you could see, and we've got more information on CURB. On the one-pagers, you will see some more information. But I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to talk about the particular pieces of legislation that we are prioritizing that are still in play and we need support on. Yes, quick. If your particular legislator supported CURB, which one of the things that since the session has been kind of short and we're working to get information out to those who are in districts who legislators were supporting, it would be great to thank them. And as you're talking about environmental justice, bringing up examples like CURB to say, this is an example of things that we want to see in the future. We want these things to be explicitly included in all of the environmental work. So I know we have probably many questions and a short amount of time. I see your hand. We will be totally open for questions following the presentation, and I'll be happy to follow up with you. Sarah?
Okay, wonderful. So does anybody not have the one pager that we prepared for you? Hands up if you don't have it. Okay, thank you. We're out. Oh my goodness. Well, if you don't have it, ask a neighbor to let you look on with them. So basically, this one pager is a guide to the 3 bills that we are asking you to advocate for, in addition to 3 bills that matter to us, including CURB, that you can mention if they matter to you as well. For example, each of these bills, the first line on the front page is sort of the bolded value message that you can use or adapt to your own interests. And for example, the clean school bus issue, the value message is, let us ensure healthy air for school children and communities to thrive. That is a deep value that I think many of us in this room share, and probably our legislators share also. So to begin with that value message can be helpful. With the clean school bus issue, it incorporates justice, that everyone deserves a healthy and safe ride to school. One of the biggest pieces here that I'd like to emphasize is health. Similar to the CURB Act, the 100% clean school bus issue addresses health needs that are right now not being addressed in our communities. And for our most vulnerable community members, our school children trying to get to school. Currently, Washington's 12,000 school bus fleet uses diesel fuel primarily. Diesel is a cause of cancer and asthma and chronic diseases, plus it can harm developing lungs. Air pollution inside the bus, research shows, can be more than 4 to 12 times what is outside, and I know we've probably all been behind a school bus before. It is not very pleasant. So inside the bus, it's worse than outside. We can prevent 15,000 premature deaths and protect our most vulnerable by passing this bill. The demand question, who cares? Why should we do this? Nobody wants it. Actually, there were nearly 200 applications for federal grants to add electric school buses across the state of Washington in the past year. Only 5 of those applications were granted. So there's a demand, an unmet need across the state that's already been expressed. And so if we're able to do this, we can meet that need as well as this wider need for health protection across the state. In terms of precedent, this would be among the precedent-setting states if we're able to pass this bill. There are 5 other states that have already passed similar laws, like New York, that has a similar timeline for implementation, but they don't have the benefit of the Climate Commitment Act that actually has already earmarked funds for this type of transition. So there are some other details on your handout here. I also want to emphasize that if you go on our website today, earthministry.com, we have several actions you can take on all of the bills that we're talking about today, that you can take, that you can share with others to take. We've prepared our website for today for you to do what's timely today. I see you have a question. .org, of course, it's .org. Thank you. Did I say .com? Read and find what you need. Thank you. All right. So the timeline has shifted to implementation towards overburdened communities first. So the first adopters would be those who have the most pollution already. So by 2027, our most polluted communities would have a way to reduce pollution immediately. And then by 2030 to have implementation fleet-wide across the state. And that is that. Okay, I know we have limited time, so if you have questions on the school bus issue, I encourage you to ask them after. We have also the REWRAP Act, which is might be familiar to some of you who have been thinking about these things. There. Oh, no, that's backwards. No. One more. It doesn't want to advance. Would you? Is it there that I need to? There we go. Thank you. All right. So the REWRAP Act is recycling, you could say, the RAP Act that's been around for a couple of legislative cycles. It is now REWRAP because it's different from 2022 and 2023 versions of this bill. It would modernize Washington recycling. It provides no-cost recycling across the state. Right now, only 58% of Washington municipalities actually have curbside recycling. It closes those gaps in services, enables statewide recycling access. There's no cost to consumers. Why? Because it implements producer responsibility. So all of those companies that are making things that we have to recycle, they'd be incentivized to reduce their packaging, to reduce the amount of plastic that is circulating in our landfills, to reduce the amount of plastic that's circulating at all. It is quite a crisis if you look into the numbers of how much plastic there is. So this would put that responsibility on producers rather than having those of us who are buying products say, well, what do we do with this now? Okay, so residential recycling services for packaging of paper products to reuse, compost, or recycle with graduated fees for reuse, composting, or recycling, or landfilling. Encouraging innovation to reduce packaging. So again, this incentivizes those companies with producer responsibility toward a sustainable circular economy where if you create something, ideally that thing at the end of its first use becomes something that can go into a second use cycle. And it also values usable materials. The numbers are kind of astronomical. How much paper is wasted, how much plastic is wasted, how much actually just goes and gets wasted. Many of those materials can be used in another product. So here is a graph. I guess it's pretty darn small, but you can see how extended producer responsibility and producer responsibility are the target direction of this policy. It's different from HB 1900, which cuts out many of the things that actually create a more effective recycling system. So this bill is the one that creates an effective incentive-based recycling system that will actually get a whole lot of things back into that use materials cycle. And it's free. Excessive costs have resulted in fewer items being collected in King County, as well as actual cancellation of recycling services in Franklin County. And in 2023, the Department of Ecology did a survey and found that over 3/4 of Washingtonians think recycling is either important or very important. And 78% agree it should be free. So, what are the current status issues for these issues? As Reverend A.C. Churchill has already said, Curb Pollution Act has been sidelined for 2024. We do expect to see it come back for 2025. So if that one is something that you could simply turn over your page when you're speaking to a legislator and say, Everyone deserves to breathe fresh air, drink clean water, and avoid polluting toxins. Value statement. How can anybody disagree with that? And offer a liaison between that and the Curb Pollution Act, and just plant that seed, because they've probably heard of it this year, and they know that you care about it if you're in the room with them. And so that's for Curb. You'll see on the front, we've adjusted from our 3 original, on the front of this sheet, you can see we adjusted from our 3 original issues and priorities to do one of our secondary priorities has moved up the list because it's still in play. So the Curb Pollution Act is not in play, 100% clean school buses is in play, the REWRAP Act is in play, and also the Navigator for energy cost savings. You can see that closer to the bottom of the page, on the front page. This is right now reintroduced in House rules. It's continuing from the last session. It's not yet been scheduled for a floor vote. So what we're hoping to do is get this scheduled for a successful House floor vote, and then move it on to the Senate in the next week or so. So we don't know if this will happen, but you asking your senators or your House representatives about this will potentially help them to understand its importance for people. What is the Navigator? It's basically a one-stop shop to find federal and state resources for energy upgrades. There's a whole lot of money circulating to do this work, and very few people know how to find it. We've been contacted by so many people wanting to know how to access IRA funds, right? There's so much that is there that just needs a good pipeline. So this Navigator creates that easy, accessible space for people to say, well, this is what I need, this is where I am, what am I eligible for? And so there's also an aligned campaign, a sort of beta version of it called The Switch Is On. So you could, if you want, take a look at that website to see what that looks like. For both the bus issue and the REWRAP Act, those are in House rules. Although the bus issue just last evening came out of House rules, it's been pulled, which means it will go to a floor vote as early as today, possibly tomorrow, maybe so. But anytime between now and Tuesday, these things could come to a floor vote. So the primary space of advocacy for things that actually could pass this year were focused on the 100% clean school buses and the REWRAP Act. So let's see, we have these issues that matter to us and these opportunities. There is, of course, today, what we are doing is a very important step. There's also, when you are not here in Olympia, calling the legislative hotline, going to ledge.wa.gov to contact your representatives, your senators, your legislators. You can also find information on bills. You can submit written testimony. You don't actually have to show up, although you can online show up to the various hearings. You can submit written testimony. The important thing there is to keep it short, focused on your story, and connected to the issue. Finding your legislator's contact info is also possible on ledge.wa.gov, and you can send them a direct message. I'd like to encourage you today, since we are here for the Interfaith Advocacy Day, to think about how you'd like to communicate the connection between these issues and your own sense of faithful or spiritual or conscience-led practice. Like, make that liaison as you're speaking to your legislator, as the speaker earlier was talking about and the legislator was talking about. It matters, this sense of deepening the discourse, deepening the conversation to a much bigger perspective can be very important. So I encourage you to do that. And now is our opportunity to think about how your story meets the issues. There are some questions on the flip side of the page at the top and some questions up here. They're pretty similar to each other. What part of your story, your experience, connects with these issues? And in talking with various other people in advocacy positions, as I understand it, that piece of personal experience can help your legislator to work on our behalf. Like, those stories actually can make the difference between a bill passing or not passing, because that's where what matters comes to clarity for people. So who are you? What do you value? What do you want? Pick one of or more of the Earth Ministry Washington IPL bills. Think about your story and how it influences your thoughts on one priority bill. And how much time do we have? We have about 10 minutes before we're done with our time together. So before moving on to this, you can begin to sort of, maybe you already walked in the door with a story formulated, what you want to bring. But are there any questions? Aha, okay, so, yes. Is there a list anywhere of the senators on the ED? That is available online, yes. ledge.wa.gov. You can go to the Senate, and then there should be a tab that says committees, and then you can find all of the senators that are on that committee there. Great question, thank you. Yeah. Yes. Right. So that is an excellent liaison. I did add a couple of slides. I wasn't sure if I would need to use them, but since you asked the question, the Climate Commitment Act is on the chopping block this year. It's one of the most forward-looking pieces of legislation in the country. Thank you, Washington. And unfortunately, there are people who'd like to dismantle it as soon as possible. We have accumulated over $2.2 billion in cap and trade, or cap and invest monies coming out from those industries that do the most polluting. And that money is earmarked to help us navigate the transition from polluting energy sources to clean energy sources. So it passed in 2021. It only began being implemented at the beginning of 2023. It's just in its infancy, really, in terms of implementation. And the investments, as far as I know, only began in December of 2023. So we won't see the biggest wows of this legislation immediately. But it is an incredibly valuable piece of legislation. Now, Proposition 2117 is what you were referring to, and unfortunately, they have had enough signatures to put it on the ballot. So as far as I hear from our coalition communities, it should be on the ballot in November. We as an organization, and I know many organizations across the state, are wanting to work on voter engagement, and Climate Commitment Act is a big piece of that desire to be involved in protecting our state for the future that we must face. Yeah. It does make sense. It does make sense. I didn't put anything on this sheet, but maybe in that space that I created, you could write what matters to you about the Climate Commitment Act. I have a quote on my slide here from Front and Centered's advocacy director, Guillermo Rogel Jr. He says, environmental justice goes hand in hand with all climate-related policy. Why? Because those who suffer the most from climate crises are those who already are sidelined in our communities, already are overburdened with pollution, already are suffering because they don't have access to things that people in other communities have access to. So this is something that comes up in every religious, doctrine I've ever seen, is we care for the poor, we care for the suffering, we care for those who have need. And then I see there are multiple hands. Thank you for your interest in discussion. One other thing that I can offer on CCA before answering some questions. In 2022, oil companies walked away with $200 billion in profits. So there are many people, even in, clean energy spaces, that are basically saying, look, Climate Commitment Act came, we paid more at the pump. That's a problem. And so they're trying to blame Climate Commitment Act for some choices that are being made by oil companies. Now, there has also been a piece of legislation that did not pass called Holding Oil Companies Accountable. That's also on the backside of your page, but it didn't pass, so we won't know how they set their pricing. Okay, I see there were 4 hands, now there are 3. I don't know who to call on. Why don't you call on somebody? If we have time for one more.
Were you asking about the initiative?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, I think we have somebody who might be able to answer that. Jeff, go ahead. Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, Jeff is one of our colleague connection, one of our community members who participates. Jeff, I'm going to forget. University Lutheran in Seattle. I can remember it. So yes, Jeff has a lot of information both on the CCA, but also on navigating, figuring out where those funds are actually going. Because there's a lot of, again, like Sarah was saying, there's not a lot of clarity about what those funds are actually doing, and they're actually doing a lot of amazing things. So as we wrap up our time together with one another, first I want to just say thank you so much for choosing to spend this short amount of time with us. We know that there were a lot of other things that you could, other areas that you could have been learning about, and they are certainly important areas, and we are hoping to learn more about them too. Our board chair, Reverend Laura Baumgartner, has a sign-in sheet. If you're wanting to learn more information about us as an organization, stay up to date about the information that we provide, both in terms of advocacy and support for faith communities and multi-faith communities. If you could sign up on that sheet, and she'll have it. There's more information about us as an organization back at the back table. We appreciate your not only support and listening, but that the work that we do is grassroots and is funded through grassroots support. So Laura has some donation cards, as well as there's a QR code up here you could sign. One other thank you is a thank you to the tech staff here. Thank you so much to United Churches of Olympia and all of the support that you are providing for this whole day. I want to say lastly is that this is a lot of information, and I'm not going to ask who feels overwhelmed. Because, you go ahead and admit it, you say me. I do, I feel that. But what I want to tell you is this. First of all, you are not expected to be an expert on all of these policies. Take a breath. If you are an expert, what's your name? Come on, if you are an expert, that's amazing. But if you are not, that's okay. There are a lot of people who have a lot of amazing information. Jeff is one of them, and Jeff helps inform us as a staff and others. And there are many of you out there who might have a lot more information as well. We do this work together. But if you don't feel like an expert on each policy, that's okay. Sure?
All right, back and forth. The other thing is that our legislators are human beings just like us. we're going into a conversation with another, depending on your perspective religiously, you are encountering another person, whatever that means to you. So honoring that person and all that they're trying to do, giving them a chance to feel appreciated for this can feel like a fire hose today for us, but think of them having to balance so very many other things as well. So just offering them some appreciation for the dedication that they offer, as well as bringing what matters to you, your story, and all of the things that bring you into the room. Just knowing that that is a sacred process too.
Sarah? I think talking about sacred process real quick, if we get back to kind of the F in IFAD and in FAN, and we at Earth Ministry as a multi-faith, and so is FAN, multi-faith community, want to add in spirituality and conscience because we recognize faith doesn't always fit for everyone. We get back to the core of what our values are. You may not be an expert in the policy, but you are an expert in your own story and what matters to you and what values you have and why you do this. So remember, as you are trying to wade through all of the information, if you share who you are, what's important to you, and what you want the legislator to do. So your name, what community you're connected to, why you do this, and what you want them to do, then that will be enough. And remember, this is not our only time to engage. It's one opportunity, but we have many more opportunities to connect with our legislators. So thank you so much to Sarah, to Laura, to Maria, to all of the Earth Ministry Washington IPL community, those who haven't connected with us before but are interested in. We would love to be in connection and relationship with you. Thank you so much, and hopefully we'll give you a little bit of a breather before you get to decide where you go next. Thank you. And we'll be available for questions if you have questions.
We're going to start the housing workshop next. We don't want to lose a minute. And welcome Po Leopai from the Washington Low Income Housing.
Thank you so much. Hello, everyone. Thank you again for being here. And I appreciate the space to share and to be here with you all. I have a few handouts that are relevant to my presentation today. And Elise is kind enough to hand that out for us. And I appreciate that, sister. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. Being in the sanctuary, I thought it might be appropriate to start things off, as a son of a preacher and a son of a mom who was a Sunday school teacher growing up. A small testimony, it'd take about 30 seconds. Between the last time I saw many of you last year and now, last year I had an episode, I had a heart attack at work. And then I was rushed to the hospital, and 2 days later I underwent open heart surgery. I say all that to say God has been good to me, and I'm blessed to be here. I appreciate anyone and everyone who sent prayers, positive thoughts, and energy my way. And again, it's great to be here with you all. Again, my name is Po Leopai. I am the advocacy organizer at the Washington Low Income Housing Alliance. I also come with lived experience of housing instability and insecurity. I grew up in low-income housing all my life, and then I experienced homelessness months after my release from prison in 2005. Despite my turnaround in life for the better, leaving the streets, gangs, and drugs and that life, I was still met with stigmas and barriers that kept housing out of reach for me. And I know many can speak on that same testimony. I was out of reach of housing and employment. And angels along the way provided avenues for me to make my way here, where today I'm impacted to be impactful. We at the Housing Alliance specialize in policy advocacy at the state level. We support bills and budget asks that center impacted stories and address the deepest concerns from those communities. We take lead and support state legislation around tenant protections, homelessness prevention, and affordable housing development with a keen eye on displacement and gentrification. Every year during the interim, our legislative agenda is informed and developed after an extensive outreach to communities across the state has taken place. We send out surveys, questionnaires, create platforms like webinars, listening sessions, and town halls to help amplify the challenges and concerns of tenants all across the state. We bring impacted stories to the attention of lawmakers in hopes of moving the needle. We also partake heavily in civic engagement, including phone banking and door knocking. If you're ever interested in joining our advocacy efforts at the Housing Alliance, I will share my contact info at the end. We would love to have you. Please reach out. Today, I am here to share with you the Housing Alliance 2024 legislative priorities. Session has been quite the roller coaster, and I hope you're all finding and making time for self-care during this season. I have a PowerPoint presentation. Right on. Thanks, team. Prepared for you all, and if you'd like, I can provide PDFs of my presentation, and I'll send it to the amazing organizers of today's Interfaith Advocacy Day. One-pagers of the PDFs of what you'll see here can also be found on our website, Washington Low-Income Housing Alliance website, and they're all downloadable if you'd like copies to your device or anything like that. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. The 4 bullets you see on the screen are the items that I will be sharing with you this morning. After sharing my presentation with you all, I will open the floor up for questions and comments. First, rent stabilization by way of HB 2114 and its Senate companion bill, SB 5961. Unfortunately, SB 5961 died last week, but our House bill, HB 2114, is still alive and was pulled to the House floor yesterday for a vote. Thanks to everyone who has supported rent stabilization thus far. After rent stabilization, I will share a bit about the Affordable Homes Act, HB 2276, brought forth by Rep. Berg, and its Senate companion bill, SB 6191, sponsored by Senator Frame. After that, I will share with you an investment that we are advocating for that will prevent cuts to homeless services. This item is a budget ask and not a bill. We need your support. We need everyone's support to help ensure that lawmakers prioritize funding for critical homelessness services that are at risk of being cut later this year without additional funding. And then last but not least, I will share our support behind the Gift Card Accountability Act. This year, the Housing Alliance has joined forces with the Washington Consumer Protection Coalition to put the public good over corporate greed by closing a loophole that allows big corporations to pocket unspent gift card balances. This could mean $255 million a year for vital basic services like housing, public health, and schools. These bills are a package deal. They are HB 2095, brought forth by Rep. Alvarado, and its companion bill, SB 5988, brought forth by Senator Trudeau, along with HB 2094, also sponsored by Rep. Alvarado, and SB 5987, brought forth by Senator Trudeau. Oh. I don't know if I'm doing this right. Next slide. Huh? Oh, aim it there? Gotcha. Oh, that's it. I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. Cool. All right, sorry. I'm probably the least tech-savvy person in the room, I'll admit. When we introduced rent stabilization last year, we were met with heavy opposition, which was expected. But last year, the bill advanced further than anyone thought it would. It eventually died, so we reintroduced it again this session. Here are the bill details as it was introduced. Rent stabilization bills HB 2114 and SB 5961, as introduced. Protects manufactured homeowners and residential tenants. Caps rent increases at 5% each 12 months. Fees count as rent for the purpose of the increase. 6 months notice for all rent increases at 3% or more. Tenants can break lease and move if rent increase is increased at 3% or more. Caps late fees at $10 flat. Caps all move-in fees to equivalent of 1 month's rent or less. Can't treat month-to-month leases different than fixed-term leases in terms of rent levels and fees. Creates a landlord resource center. And then last, enforcement with a private right of action, I should say, penalties, and also by the state's Attorney General's office. Here's the status of our rent stabilization bills now. SB 5961, brought forth by Senator Trudeau, was heard in the Senate Housing Committee for the first week of session. Over 1,000 people across the state signed in pro, and many renters, landlords, and supporters testified in favor of the bill. The bill was brought up for a vote, but unfortunately, Senator Cleveland in the 49th Legislative District voted no, and the bill did not pass. All other Democrats voted yes. Although an extreme amendment was needed to secure Senator Shoemake's vote, Shoemake's in the 42nd Legislative District. That said, we appreciate that Senator Shoemake negotiated in good faith with us and didn't let the bill die. Regarding HB 2114, brought forth by Rep. Alvarado, was already passed out of the House Housing Committee and also passed House Appropriations Committee on Saturday, this past Saturday. In both committees, all Democrats voted yes. Yesterday, in Rules Committee, HB 2114 was pulled to the House floor for a vote. My boss told me on the down low that the vote might take place this Saturday. The message to House Democrats now is please vote this bill off the floor by Tuesday, February 13th. Again, thanks to all of those who are supportive of rent stabilization. We're still in this fight for rent stabilization. And later on, I'll have a QR code where you can click on and take action on House Bill 2114. Oh yeah, I was gonna open up the floor after everything, but yeah. That's correct. That's correct. Yeah, that is correct. And I'll share the amendments next. Yeah. No, great question. I appreciate it. Again, we took on some amendments, to be honest with y'all, we're not thrilled with, in order to keep the bill alive this session. We will continue to increase our advocacy efforts and continue to educate lawmakers on why the original bill details should remain in place. The amendments are as follows. The amendments are as follows for HB 2114. Raises the percentage cap on how much landlords are allowed to raise rents in any given 12-month period from 5% to 7%. Pardon me, I'm getting a little warm. Let me take off this jacket real quick. Removes a provision allowing tenants to break their lease anytime after receiving a 180-day notice that their landlord intends to raise their rental rate by 3% or more within a 12-month period, but adds the lease break provision in cases where the landlord attempts to raise the rent above what is allowed under the bill. It changes the cap on late fees from $10, which we were shooting for, to 1.5% of the tenant's total monthly rent. It adds exemptions from the rental rate increase limit for several living situations where the owner is also a resident of the property in question. And finally, regarding amendments, it clarifies the existing exemption for properties that are subsidized and rent regulated by their fund source and extends this to nonprofit and public housing authority exemption to increased notice requirements and to the cap on deposits. Yeah, which part? Um, yeah, so as far as I understand, um, residents who are in like low-income housing, affordable housing, like, some of those public housing authority folks are exempt from this bill. They don't, because there are already, to my knowledge, there are already protections somewhat in them. I agree, Elizabeth. I agree. I agree. I agree. And to my knowledge, that's what I understand about it, is because that they have, or they're working on protections, I should say, so they don't get to benefit from the rent stabilization. Again, this is a work in progress, and with it advancing last year further than we thought, and then now we're really gaining momentum. This year, I'm really trying to advocate, but also listening to you all, to our community, because we all know what's best. We're the experts in what we're doing, and so thank you, Elizabeth, for that question and for your advocacy and leadership. And if I am asked any questions today that I may not have the answer to, because I'm not going to fake the funk or front with you all, but I'll leave my email. We can meet one-on-one, coffee on me, or, and I'd love to find the answer, gather that, and bring an informed answer to you. Yes. To my knowledge, yes. Yeah. And that's a whole nother beast to tackle too when it comes to Section 8 and those folks, the stories that as an advocacy organizer, I'm tasked with identifying and gathering all these stories from across the state. And that topic is a whole nother, hours worth of strategy and, and planning for. Yes, friend. Yeah. It's, mhm. I can promise you this, friend, you are on our radar. And there are things that are happening behind the scenes as we sit here and as we meet, including what you're addressing now. As you all know, it's huge, and they're throwing crumbs at us a lot of times, when we're trying to fight for folks and communities. But I appreciate that and bringing that up, and it's definitely on my radar and in my heart. Yes. Yeah. Yeah, we're moving in that direction, but not quite there, to be honest with you. What I'm hearing from stories from, I'll speak on manufactured homeowners. What I've been hearing from hundreds of them is property management companies, a lot of them from out of state, come in and buy up the property under their noses, and then they jack up the rent under their noses without any of their input, without caring about what their thoughts are in the matter. And then they get surprised with the notice, and then they have 2 to 3 months to move. Not only does this break up communities, but I grew up in a household where we love and respect our elders, and it breaks my heart whenever I'm on the phone or on a Zoom meeting with, with someone who could be my dad, be my grandpa, my grandma. And so we're definitely working on targeting those predatorial property management companies that are really just preying on a lot of us. And so, and it's money. You follow the money, you'll find the culprit. Any other questions before I continue? I appreciate the questions, y'all. Thank you. All right. We'll go to the next slide. This slide shows the Senate Housing Committee members, including 2 lawmakers who have needed persuading and who have been hard to move since taking office. Senator Cleveland in the 49th Legislative District, Clark County, is highlighted here, along with Senator Shoemake in the 42nd Legislative District up in Whatcom County. Both are highlighted. If anyone here has a relationship with either of these 2 lawmakers, please reach out and ask them to support rent stabilization. More importantly, the Housing Alliance believes that building and maintaining relationships with our state lawmakers is key. We also believe that dialogue and conversation can go a long way. Thank you in advance for your outreach if you are planning to reach out. So as the advocacy organizer at the Housing Alliance, I am tasked with bringing impacted stories to the attention of lawmakers. When trying to share the damage that can be done by rent increases with lawmakers, I realized quickly that saying 5% or 7% wasn't resonating, it wasn't describing the magnitude of the harm, and lawmakers just weren't getting it. Therefore, we decided at the Housing Alliance to show them the damage in numbers. What you are seeing here, what you are seeing here are the calculated numbers after tenants receive a 7% increase at every 12 months for the first 3 years of their tenancy. The areas reflected in this image are the areas where key lawmakers serve. They are all intentionally placed in there. Vancouver and Bellingham are listed for the reasons I mentioned earlier with Senators Shoemake and Cleveland. Spokane is listed here because Senator Billig is majority leader and on the Rules and Ways and Means committees. I won't go through all of them because honestly, to be real with y'all, I get a little choked up. It's like that. The numbers are staggering. As you can see, for a family living in Vancouver with an initial rent of $14.95 in a 962 square foot unit, they would experience an almost $340 per month increase by the third year of their tenancy, compared to $235 per month increase in the third year with the original 5% cap. There it is. Oh, I went backwards. Sorry. Am I facing it the right way? Yeah, there we go. Cool. Having a home is a basic need. Washington State's housing ecosystem with rising rents, Washington State's housing ecosystem with rising rents and a low stock of housing at all levels, but especially affordable housing, has left working families struggling and exacerbated the homelessness crisis. The Affordable Homes Act will help ensure that Washington has predictable, sustainable funding to increase the supply of truly affordable housing by decreasing the real estate excise tax, or the REET, and adding the real estate transfer tax, the RETT, on high-value properties, which will reduce the share of taxes paid for by lower and middle-income families. Every taxpayer selling a property under $3.02 million will see a tax cut or be held harmless. Now I'll read through the details on this slide. The Affordable Homes Act, HB 2276, brought forth by Rep. Berg, and SB 6191, brought forth by Senator Frame, creates a new permanent fund source for affordable housing by adding a modest 1% real estate transfer tax on properties that sell for over $3.02 million. Both bills are exempt from cutoffs because they are considered NTIB, necessary to implement the budget. They are still alive. Some key things to know. This will supplement capital budget investments and help our state speed up the production of affordable homes in every community in our state. The new tax acts just like the real estate excise tax, which is tiered. So only the portion of the property that sells for over $3.025 million is charged the additional 1%. This will fund the Housing Trust Fund, Apple Health and Homes, housing for people with developmental disabilities, and the operations of affordable housing. Finally, the seller pays this, not the buyer. It will not increase the selling cost. This map shows the percentage of properties in a given county that would experience a decrease or no change in the amount of taxes applied at the time of sale for a real estate transaction. So in Pierce County, I don't know if y'all can see that, I hope you can, but in Pierce County, for example, 99.2% of property sales would see less tax applied to a property sale under the new law than under current conditions. In the bright green counties, 100% of property sales would have lower taxes. And in the white counties, there's not enough data to do the calculation. This slide shows current law on the left column, and the right column shows what the Affordable Homes Act entails. I'll just read the bottom one. In current law, any property that's sold for $3.025 million and above pay a 3% REET, a real estate excise tax. With the Affordable Homes Act, any property that is sold for $3.025 or more million or more will pay the 3% REET tax along with the 1% real estate transfer tax. Currently, when properties sell for $3.02 million or more, the seller pays a 3% real estate excise tax. Under the Affordable Homes Act, any property, like I said, is sold for, will get both those percentages to be paid. Oh, sorry about that, yeah. Yes. Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Thank you. And I appreciate the engagement, y'all, because I learned as well along the way, so thank you. I think we're on this one. Oh, yeah, all right. We're a little less than halfway through the legislative session, and lawmakers are starting to make decisions about the supplemental budget. In even-numbered years like this, the legislature makes adjustments to the two-year budget they passed in the previous year. We need your support to help ensure that they prioritize funding for critical homelessness services that are at risk of being cut later this year without additional funding. Our state has a dedicated fund source for homelessness prevention, from document recording fees paid to register real estate transactions. State lawmakers took action last year to address a shortfall in the document recording fees that fund homelessness services across the state. Because home sales are down and inflation continues to be high, the money the state collects from those fees is still falling behind projections, while it is also more expensive to keep programs running. Almost $70 million is needed in the supplemental budget to prevent a loss of services across the state. If the state doesn't provide this funding, programs will close, shelters will close, reduce hours, and help fewer people. $70 million is a big ask in a supplemental budget year, so it's important that lawmakers in every district hear from their constituents that we cannot let this happen. These fees fund shelters, housing, street outreach, and other efforts to prevent people from becoming homeless and assist people experiencing homelessness in every county in our state. When Washington is already unable to meet the needs of people facing homelessness, the last thing we can afford is to lose more ground. Too many people are living and dying on the streets, but it doesn't have to be that way. Maintaining current investments in homelessness services must be a top priority for the supplemental budget. The Housing Alliance's ask is to fill the gap for state and local shortfalls and to increase administrative funding to help frontline nonprofits increase their workers' wages and address critical worker shortages. My final slide, and I apologize, that should say protect, not protection. I'd like to introduce you all to the Gift Card Accountability Act. This is a package deal. This year, like I said earlier, this year, the Housing Alliance has joined forces with the Washington Consumer Protection Coalition to put the public good over corporate greed by closing the loophole that allows big corporations to pocket unspent gift card balances. HB 2095, brought forth by Rep. Alvarado, SB 5988, brought forth by Senator Trudeau, along with HB 2094, sponsored by Rep. Alvarado, and SB 5987, brought forth by Senator Trudeau. Both House bills were sponsored by Rep. Alvarado, and both Senate bills were sponsored by Senator Trudeau. We don't know what we don't know. But what we do know is that corporations like Starbucks successfully lobbied to create a loophole in Washington law in 2004, allowing them to keep their customers' unspent gift card balances. Back then, Washington corporations reported just $3 million unspent dollars on gift cards each year. Last year, approximately $255 million in unspent gift cards bolstered the bottom lines of big Washington retailers. In the last 5 years alone, Starbucks has claimed almost $900 million of customers' unspent gift cards as corporate revenue, which inflates executive bonuses. Every year, we support progressive revenue policies that those who can afford it pay their fair share for the services and infrastructure we all benefit from. When this very important piece of legislation becomes law, gift card balances unspent after 3 years would be transferred to the state's general fund instead of bolstering the bottom lines of big corporations. This could mean $255 million a year for vital basic services like housing, public health, and schools. Once again, those bill numbers are HB 2095 and its Senate Companion Bill SB 5988, along with HB 2094 and its Senate Companion Bill SB 5987, brought forth by Senator Trudeau. And that's my presentation, my PowerPoint presentation. At this point, I would love to open the floor up for any thoughts, questions, or comments. Yes? Yeah, we're asking for 70 million. 70 million? Yes. Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes. Right. Statewide, at the state level, our networks are moving, but locally, there are cities where folks have come together and doing the same work we're doing at the state level locally, including addressing what you just mentioned, including other things like Section 8, a lot of those different challenges, but there are efforts in federal way, or in South King County, there are efforts that are growing in Vancouver, because of Senator Cleveland, as well as up in Whatcom County. So we're intentionally just grabbing community and growing community so that they can take on the heavy task of meeting with city, local officials, local elected officials, and amplifying their concerns. I encourage folks to partake in their local, testimonies and all that. And it's, it's another level from state, but it's still the same formula. Creating, maintaining relationships with lawmakers, meeting up with them, having dialogue and conversation. They're human just like us. And sometimes what's helped me when I meet with the opposing thoughts is just identifying some common grounds that we both share that are human stuff. Just being grounded in just being human. And once we identify some of those common ground thoughts, and we share those and we're aligned in those, then we dive into some of the more difficult topics. Yes. Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah. They sure do. A lot of impact and influence. We got to understand, we got to believe to some extent, local folks know these state folks. You know, we got to believe that there's somewhere in there that they are connected. So I think it's very necessary and appropriate to build power locally, wherever you're from. Yes. Yes, sir. Yeah. Yeah, so let me start by saying when I first started this work, I'm still new. This is my third year doing policy advocacy, so I still consider myself a newbie. But um, yeah, yeah. So we have two bills that we hope are two opportunities and vehicles that we're driving through the legislative session. And it's one originates in the House and one originates in the Senate. And we're hoping originally the Senate bill was our vehicle and then it died. And now 2114 has taken lead. And we're continually reaching out to any lawmakers who may be on the fence, who may not really understand some of the details in the bills. We've drafted FAQs and talking points and all that to really respond with an informed response to folks when they ask. But yeah, the 5961 died last week, and then 2114 could be up for a vote this Saturday. Um, yes, then it starts. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And to my understanding, it just gives us a better chance of gaining rent stabilization in our state. And so, yeah. Yes, they're pretty much identical bills. Yeah, wherever we left off there, we're still in motion and talking with them with amendments and all this other stuff. But yeah, yeah. Thank you for your question, sir. Yes, in the back. Yes. I've heard of that whole campaign and movement, but we're not, and for some reason we're not a part of that movement. But there's a good chance that we're not a part of it because there might be elements that are missing in their details. If they don't have an eye on gentrification, then we probably won't jump on board and support it, and displacement as well. So some of the awesome movements happening across the state, we stay in our lane at the Housing Alliance. So it's racial lens, racial justice lens, tenant protections, homelessness prevention, and affordable housing development with a keen eye on displacement and gentrification. Yes. Right. Right. That's so real. Yeah, words matter. That's what I learned regarding legislation and policy. Words matter. Every single word matters. So when I look over a bill, I read it and I reread it and I read it a third time so I can, really capture the context and their aim. So, did I see another handle? Oh, yes. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That's real. Yeah. Yeah. Right. Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Sometimes the lack of knowledge on what's out there is a barrier for folks, and so that's very true. When I lived out of my car for almost a year, um, I had to find those folks who knew where I could park, where it was safe. I tried a couple of rest areas up and down I-5. I got booted out, I got kicked out. So I found those safe havens where I could park and be safe, along with other resources that are needed. And one thing I learned is we can't blanket and put a Band-Aid on everyone, and everyone has their own story on how they ended up out there or wherever they are. So it's important that we hone in on their specific needs, whatever that might be, and tackle it in that way as a community. Anyone else? Yes. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, I think it was more of a comment. Yeah. Would you mind repeating that for some of our folks in the back? Yeah, yeah. I last year, months after my heart attack, I visited Spokane, Camp Hope. And I went out to Camp Hope and met a lot of folks who shared the same thing you just said. It was heartbreaking and appalling at the same time. And then later on, a couple months later, I found out they closed the entire camp. And who knows where these folks are at now. And so folks are falling through the cracks, folks are being neglected and dismissed, and not valued. And I think there's a problem with that. Yes. Right. Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. Love that approach. Love that. Hmm. Right. I love your approach and your heart. Yeah, keep that up. Absolutely. Yes, you in the back there? Yes. You, yeah, sorry. Oh, okay, cool. Sweet. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the heads up. We do have the QR code. I think it's out now with where you can support House Bill 2114. We have momentum and we're very optimistic and we're not letting the foot off the gas. Thank you so much. If nothing else, I want to release y'all and have a blessed rest of your day. Thank you so much.